Seattle. Last of the 1 o'clock games, we've got Tennessee 27, Los Angeles Chargers 24, another overtime win. Tennessee gets the win here to go to 1-1. Chargers fall to 0-2. I don't want to misquote the stat, but it's something like teams that have scored over 25 points per game with no turnovers through 2 games have never started 0-2. But the Chargers are here.
Yeah.
And they have.
The Chargers
I think that's the stat. Man. What'd you make of this one?
I mean, you forget sometimes. You forget sometimes that it's the Chargers. You know, you start rationally analyzing the game and working through it on a player-by-player basis or a scheme basis, and you forget that none of it matters because it's the Chargers, you know? And they're going to do what they always do, which is find a way to lose a game that they should have won comfortably. And this is what happened. Like, Ryan Tannehill went from having one of the worst performances of his NFL career in week 1 to looking like peak, you know, Tennessee Titans Ryan Tannehill with his 90-plus grade and just being efficient and, you know, hitting a couple of nice throws here and there. That's like, this should not have happened, any of this game.
Yeah, the Chargers defense is allowing 10.3 yards per attempt through 2 games. So every time the quarterback drops back and makes a throw, they're averaging a first down against the Chargers defense. Now, that's not including the sacks, of course. I'm just talking yards per attempt. Tannehill was sacked 5 times. The offensive line was having some serious communication problems on the left side.
Right.
It was just ugly.
He was under pressure, 8 dropbacks, and they resulted in 5 sacks. They were almost all like instant win, blown protections or that kind of thing. And yet it still didn't stop the Chargers defense capitulating and, you know, failing to stop anything.
Yeah, the 4th and 4, Kenneth Murray's right there at the snap, blown assignment and everything. But first off, I want to give credit to the Titans, right? Because you got to give credit. Tannehill did play a nice, clean game. Beautiful 70-yard pass to Treylon Burks, hit him in stride, hit Chris Moore for a 49-yarder. I thought Tannehill, this was the old Tannehill, right? I mean, threw the ball much better. And defensively, one of the matchups that we highlighted coming into the game was the Titans' defensive line and their ability to stop the run, because the Chargers had the most effective run game in the NFL in week 1. Now, Austin Eckler does not play in this game, and I'm sure that's a factor, but Tennessee wins up front for the 2nd straight week, not necessarily from a pass rush standpoint, but just run defense and making the Chargers more one-dimensional. And so, you know, that's the old school Titans that we've seen under Mike Vrabel, right? Just kind of win the phone booth battles and, you know, win some of those small battles that added up, and you've got a 27-24 overtime win. Yeah,
they really did. Like, there were a couple of weird things in this game. At one point, I think generally speaking, the Chargers offense is fine. The Justin Herbert, Kellen Moore connection, I think, is probably working in the right direction. The fact that Austin Eckler wasn't playing is a big blow, not just for what he could do on the ground, but as a receiver as well. It's a big loss to that offense, as much as maybe any running back in the NFL. And, you know, this is the reason that the man wanted more money in the offseason. This would be a good game to highlight in his personal plea for more money to the Chargers. But at one point, they dialed up Mike Williams in a jet sweep. It's like, what? Now, there have been a surprisingly high number of Mike Williams.
It works, didn't it?
I mean, a little bit. But
I wouldn't do it just because I want him to not get tackled ever.
There have been
because of the injuries.
There have been a surprisingly large number of wide receiver Mike Williamses in NFL history, and not a single one of them belongs on a jet sweep. Like, if you think of all the Mike Williams that have played wide receiver in the NFL, none of them are the type of receiver that is well suited to having a jet sweep carry, including this one, who is best suited vertically.
Rest in peace to the Bucks, Mike Williams.
Right, absolutely. Who is suited to being a vertical threat deep down the field and is not, you know, a short area ball in his hand type of receiver. So that was a bizarre play call in this offense and a bizarre deployment of their talent, which is starting to look like a little bit of a trend with those receivers. I mean, Mike Williams in this game, Quentin Johnston in week 1 was being deployed in some weird ways. Then there's also Josh Palmer had an absolutely ridiculous catch in the back of the end zone where kind of looked like he got both feet down and they didn't give it to him because this field doesn't have the black pellets that pop up, when you drag your toe. This one doesn't have
grass.
that.
It's grass. We're
Right.
going to lose that when the Players Association wins out and it's only grass.
There you go. This one didn't have the concrete evidence that his second toe dragged, although it looked like it did from the replay. And one of the best catches of the season did not get credited to the man.
Yeah, this is why I hate the Chargers. Because a lot of my analysis, I like the things they're doing. I mean, I don't like them getting beaten for 70-yard touchdowns. I don't like the fact that Khalil Mack can't rush the passer anymore, and maybe he's lost it. I don't like that. I think the Kellen Moore Herbert thing is fascinating right now. I mean, they have Keenan Allen. There was a beautiful cover 2 shot to Keenan Allen where they used Quentin Johnston to clear out the safety. They used Quentin Johnston's speed. We wanted them to add speed. They're using him as a speed clear out. He's not, tearing up the stat sheet or anything like that. Had 1 catch for 2 yards, but you see the safety drawn, and Keenan Allen's creating big plays up the sideline. Herbert's averaging over 10 yards per target, right? The complete opposite of what he had been before. To me, I think the Chargers are close, right? I mean, they scored a ton of points last week, and it's really the defense that's the concern. I think this Chargers offense is legit, and they're going to be good. And they didn't have Eckler, and they didn't, win the trench battle, but this passing game is going to be explosive as long as Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, if those guys stay out there, the tight ends, they're going to be explosive. And so I'm not concerned about that side of the ball. Like, I am just extremely concerned by the Chargers not being good defensively under Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
I mean, you said there's weird stuff in this game. They got up, 2 scores, go for 2. They get up 11-0. Once again, how did they do that? Brandon Staley goes for it on 4th and 4, up 3-0 early in the game. And they scored. That was after the Palmer non-touchdown. And then Herbert makes a great throw for a touchdown. I mean, I'm not trying to compliment Staley. I think the game management part of it is fine. I'm concerned about the defense. How is the defense that bad and giving up 10 yards per attempt? I know it was the Dolphins week 1, but this is the Titans passing attack that should not be that explosive, and they're letting them be that explosive. I think that's concerning for the Chargers. And for the Titans, this was the same type of game that they win, right? Like they have way more carries than dropbacks, and Tannehill just goes 20 for 24 and hits a couple passes and takes care of it. And at the end of the day, the Titans find a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Clark, who formerly of The Ringer, now does a podcast with Omaha and ESPN, he tweeted after the game, so let's say someone in charge asks Brandon Staley why he should keep his job. What is his best argument? And I think that pretty much sums it up at this point. Like, you're a defensive coach that's been brought on for your expertise in a system that is thriving throughout the NFL. Like, it's not like your system is just, it's run its course and it's being found out. Like, the system's actually working everywhere else. And you've got some talent, and the defensive side of the ball is just crapping itself every game. What do you do here? Like, what do you... And we just hired an offensive mind to fix that side, and that actually seems like it's working. So our multi-million-dollar quarterback and his new offensive coach seem to be going in the right direction, and your defense continues to just collapse every week. What are you bringing to the table?
Two things there. When our friend Zach Robinson was one of the finalists for the Chargers offensive coordinator job, and then Kellen Moore came free from the Cowboys and gets the job because he's got some experience and he's had some success with Dallas. And in the back of my head, I was like, well, Staley's on the hot seat here. Kellen Moore might be the head coach of the Chargers a year from now. It's early. They're 0-2, but that's the type of stuff we're talking about right now. Kellen Moore might be taking over for the Chargers. Who knows? But the answer to the Staley thing that makes it worse is when you look at the front office and say, okay, what did we give you? Now, maybe they gave him a rundown version of Khalil Mack. Maybe he is at the wrong side of his career. but you have player number 3, who's supposed to be the perfect movable chess piece for any defensive mastermind. You have one of the highest paid corners in the league, J.C. Jackson. Right or wrong, they have second round pick Asante Samuel, first round pick Kenneth Murray, Eric Kendricks, who was hurt. But they've had a lot of pieces here, which is why we always get excited, because the on paper it looks good for the Chargers every year. And yeah, Staley's not finding a way to make all those pieces fit defensively right now.
It's also, by the way, I mean, that's an open debate, right? How much of it is personnel moves have been bad? Like maybe Kenneth Murray hasn't played well in the NFL. Asante Samuel Jr. hasn't necessarily become the player we expected him to be. J.C. Jackson been a disaster so far. Like, how much of that is consistently the personnel moves have actually just been mistakes, and how much of it is actually those guys? There's the basis of a really good defense here if the defensive coach made it work. Like, we're in this debate now, and this is the conversation that Chargers brass is probably having. Like, do we actually have a top 10 defense if we just change the coach tomorrow? Because this group, we thought, first-round talent linebacker, second-round talent cornerback, one of the best ball hawk cornerbacks in the NFL in the last several years. You start going through the list, you're like, this group should be good, and it isn't. Like, is this a coaching problem?
Yeah, that's why, again, I think Herbert, there's a couple downfield shots that Herbert takes where I don't think he's reading the field well, and he's just kind of chucking it up. And I don't love that. He might be better at actually working the underneath game, and that's why he's settled into the style that he has. But I do think over time, we're going to look back at Herbert's stats and production this year and say, okay, the Kellen Moore experiment worked. We're going to look at the Chargers offense and say that worked. It really might be Kellen Moore's team at the end of the year, and then he's going to bring in, as you just said, maybe a defensive coordinator to right the ship. It's early. It's only 2 games in, but 0-2. Some reporter brought up the Jacksonville game. Brandon Staley was not pleased.